Our next story is also about a special treat. It lasts longer than a snow cone, but you can only get it a few times a year. And with this, too, there's more than meets the eye. Every once in a while, there's no set schedule. University City fires up the Searchlight on top of its City Hall and sweeps it around and around just because it can. It doesn't really need a searchlight, but it's there, and it's part of the city's history. A reminder of E.G. Lewis, the colorful man who built the town. He built that building and he topped it with the biggest light he could find. There are different stories, legends really, about the Searchlight, but before we get into that, we'll start with the man who these days is the man behind the Searchlight, and sometimes even the man inside of it. His name is Bill Kaufman, and on the afternoon of a Searchlight night, he comes to the University City Hall, goes into the basement to turn on the power, and then heads up to the top floor. This is a building he has known inside out for a long time. And that's your dad's picture on the...
Yep, there he was. He was mayor of U-City from 1958 to 1978, and when I was growing up as a child, I spent all my summers and basically all my free time hanging around the fire department and hanging around the City Hall, which is how I got my interest in working on the Searchlight.
Was it working then?
It was working. The city engineer, Robert Norvell, who had fixed the Searchlight back in the 60s, was still operating it at the time, and that's who taught me.
You take a winding staircase out of the council chambers and into the attic. That's where you will find yourself under the City Hall dome. That's where the Searchlight usually sits, hidden away on an elevator platform that will raise it up. Kaufman's real job is running a television production company. He owns a satellite truck. He's never been paid for operating and maintaining the Searchlight. But the job, even after all these years, does have its rewards.
This is one of the most spectacular views in the St. Louis area, and being able to have watched over the years the development of the Loop as it's moved further and further down Del Mar, and they've renovated all these buildings all the way down. It's just spectacular. And the skyline of the city, where you can see all the way down to the arch and the building line along Kings Highway, nothing can beat it.
Back down inside the dome, he gets to work, cranking open each side of the hatch. And then he turns on the elevator, which is itself an antique, and the Searchlight rises up.
The long-standing story had always been that the Tsar of Russia had ordered the Searchlight for the World's Fair, which was just down the road here in Forest Park. It was never delivered, and E.G. Lewis, the founder of U-City, bought it and put it up here, actually to draw fairgoers to his tent city, which was located just west of City Hall.
But only part of that story is verifiable, and there are those who doubt the Russian Tsar had anything to do with this light, didn't order it, didn't cancel the order because of war with Japan. There's just no record of it. It's possible this was always intended for the empire E.G. Lewis hoped to build. He constructed his tower in 1903 just outside the St. Louis city limits. It would serve as the headquarters of his national women's magazines and other operations, and he would build a town around it. In 1904, during the World's Fair, Lewis did operate a tent city where fairgoers could stay, and the spotlight, that was his billboard. In this photograph taken from the fairgrounds, you can see Lewis's spotlight reflecting off the clouds, and so could the crowds in Forest Park. Bill Kaufman today can show you exactly what Lewis was doing. He focuses the powerful beam on the last of the original World's Fair buildings, the Art Museum. That's what it looks like from up here. This is what it looks like from Art Hill when the beam hits the building.
It's searching for potential customers for Mr. Lewis is what it's doing. He would attract the visitors from the fair, and the fair was closed on Sundays, and he wasn't. And people would come over here because he would do tours of his buildings. He would promote his brand new bank that he was just starting. He would promote the Women's Magazine and the Farm Journal. He was always selling things. He was the world's great promoter.
Lewis was a little man who did everything big, and it was certainly in character that he would want the world's largest searchlight. When he put it on his new building, it wasn't really icing on the cake. He was the kind of guy who started with the icing and figured the cake would follow. And it did. But was this ever really the Tsar's Searchlight?
Oh, that's a wonderful story, and people love that story, but no, the real story's dull. He just ordered it from General Electric.
E.G. Lewis.
When the Historical Society obtained a collection of some of Lewis's old magazines, they finally found a reference to the Searchlight, and not a word about the Tsar.
But to find the article in here, and then to get the documentation that I did from General Electric, you know, it's pretty conclusive that he was the original customer and the Russians had nothing to do with it.
So you're responsible for
bought
killing
it.
the myth, then?
Yes, I'm a myth killer.
She figures if E.G. Lewis wanted a more sensational explanation than that, he could have come up with one, thrown in a Tsar or a king, but he didn't. He did, however, claim that his spotlight could be seen in Chicago.
So you have a set of arc rods that operate like a welder, and they create an arc and a flame that then gets reflected into that ground glass reflector. Then the light shoots out the front and heads out to points beyond, all the way to Kansas City.
That's not true.
I just can't prove it by me.
I've heard that, but I don't believe it.
But I have seen it in Creve Coeur.
Well, okay. It gets out pretty far.
Gets out pretty far.
Yeah.
I think on a clear night you might be able to see it out in Chesterfield.
Yeah.
Maybe in Chesterfield Valley, but, you know.
Right. Here we go.
The Searchlight's a machine that needs parts and maintenance, and Bill Kaufman, donating years of service, has kept it working. But when he turns it on, you'll find the Searchlight is still working in other ways. People will walk and drive just to look at it and talk about it. And that's all E.G. Lewis ever wanted it to do.